Welcome to our magical bedtime story collection. Tonight, relax and enjoy 5 classic fairy tales in English. Sleeping Beauty, Tom Thumb, Hansel and Gretel, Mother Holle, and the Ugly Duckling. Get cozy, close your eyes, and let these timeless stories gently guide you to sleep. Today's story is Sleeping Beauty. And we learn English through the stories. Let's begin. Sleeping Beauty by Charles Perrault. Long ago, in a distant kingdom, a king and queen, overjoyed, finally welcomed a daughter, Princess Aurora. The king and queen asked 7 fairies to be her godmothers. Each one granted the little princess a gift. The princess received beauty, grace, kindness, sensitivity, and the ability to sing and play every musical instrument. "The princess will be perfect," exclaimed one of the fairies. "But where is Mirabelle, our sister?" asked another. "She's always late, even on the day of a princess's christening." But instead of Mirabelle, Maleficent appeared, an old fairy no one had invited. Maleficent had a bad temper and preferred to cast spells rather than do good deeds. "Your Majesties," she said, "although I was not invited, I wish to bestow a gift upon the princess. Forgive our unforgivable oversight." The king interrupted, trying to calm his wife. A shiver ran through the room. With a terrible smile, the evil fairy leaned over the cradle. With a trembling voice, she said, "Before she turns 18 years old, Princess Aurora will prick her finger on a spindle, and she will die." Sobbing, the queen threw herself into the king's arms. But then Mirabelle arrived, the 7th fairy. She was about to bestow her gift upon the little princess, and she said in a firm voice, "Do not worry, my king and my queen. Although it is true that I have no power to undo this curse, I can soften it. The princess will not die. She will fall into a deep sleep that will last 100 years. Only a brave prince will be able to awaken her." The king wanted to prevent the misfortune at all costs. He ordered all the spindles to be burned. Large bonfires were lit throughout the kingdom. The inhabitants threw their spindles into the fire, aware of the danger. The years went by. Aurora possessed all the qualities the fairies had given her. She would soon turn 18. One day, while she was playing, she heard a voice calling her, "Aurora, Aurora, come here." "Who are you, and what do you have in your hands?" asked the young woman, intrigued. "It's used to spin wool. Would you like to try?" the old woman suggested. As soon as she picked up the spindle, she pricked her finger and fell into a deep sleep. Maleficent, the merciless fairy, for it was her, laughed wickedly. "Sleep peacefully, my child. You have 100 years to rest." The king and queen, deeply saddened, ordered the princess to be taken to her bed. Then Mirabel appeared, the seventh fairy. She thought of the helplessness of Aurora when she awoke alone, without family, without friends, after 100 years. That is why she plunged all the inhabitants of the castle, humans and animals alike, into the same sleep. Then Mirabel caused briars, rose bushes, and thorns to grow all around the castle, so dense that no one could pass through them. 100 long years passed. A prince heard the legend, a mysterious castle where a beautiful young woman slept. The people of the kingdom called it the Castle of the Sleeping Beauty. The prince decided to go and see what was happening. When he was arriving at the castle, the briars suddenly parted. The prince entered the great hall. He was astonished. The queen, the king, the children, the men, the women, the animals, everyone seemed dead. However, seeing the color of their faces, he realized they were only asleep for a whole century. The ladies and nobles, the pages and maids, everyone was plunged into the same deep sleep. At last, the prince pushed open the door to a magnificent bedroom. There, he discovered the most beautiful young woman he had ever seen, Princess Aurora. He approached the bed and gazed at her in wonder. Then he knelt beside her and took her hand. The princess opened her eyes and smiled at him. "Are you my prince?" she said. "How long you have taken." The spell vanished in that very instant. Throughout the castle, everyone awoke from their long sleep. The briars disappeared, and the forest regained its usual appearance. In the kitchen, the fires were lit, and a great feast was prepared to celebrate the princess's awakening. That very same night, the wedding was celebrated between the prince and the princess. They lived very happily and had 2 children, a boy they named Day and a little girl, Aurora, and they lived happily ever after in love and harmony till the end of their days. The end. Today's story is Hansel and Gretel, and we learn English through the stories. Let's begin. Once upon a time, in a faraway country, a poor woodcutter lived with his family. He worked hard, and the small harvests of fruits and potatoes were not always sufficient to feed his own. One day, Hansel and Gretel went with their father into the forest to gather firewood and mushrooms. "Don't stray too far," the woodcutter insisted, but the children couldn't find any mushrooms, so they wandered deeper and deeper into the forest. Soon they could no longer hear the blows of their father's axe. "Ugh," sighed the girl. "We've walked so far just to find some mushrooms." The children were resting on the grass when some rabbits and a little fox came up to them. "Don't eat the mushrooms," Gretel said to a rabbit. "Let's go back with Dad." But night had already fallen. The moon shone above the trees, sometimes too late to return. Trees, the paths in full night are dangerous. Will some wolf attack? Do you think some wolf will attack us? The little one whimpered. The frightened children's cries were advised by the wolves. A wise owl going to catch. "Don't stay here in the cold. Follow me. I'll lead you to a hut that's nearby." The children followed the owl. "How strange!" The girl was surprised. "Who lives there? I don't like it." "Look," said her brother, "I'm tired and very hungry." Gretel agreed, and the two headed toward the strange little house. "The chocolate and caramel house," exclaimed Gretel. They could eat as much as they wanted for hours and hours. Gretel liked the caramel and Hansel the chocolate. "Who's eaten my roof?" a sweet voice suddenly asked. The door of the house opened, and a plump little old lady appeared. Gretel was frightened, but the lady calmed her down and invited them inside. "No, don't go in. Run away while you still can," cried a little deer, tugging at Gretel's dress. But the girl went in anyway. "I'll prepare hot chocolate for you," said the little old lady. Hansel and Gretel felt safe. The lady was kind enough that they slept peacefully. "Gretel, I'd like to have a chocolate house," murmured Hansel. "Good night," replied Gretel, exhausted. And while they dreamed of chocolate and candies, Gretel was frightened when she opened her eyes in the morning. The beautiful house had turned into an old hut, and the lady had become a witch. "Ha, ha, ha, ha," she laughed. "I've made a good capture," and she locked Hansel in a cage. The witch forced Gretel to cook every day to fatten up her brother. As soon as he was plump enough, she would devour him. Every morning the witch, who could barely see, ordered Hansel to stick his finger through the bars so she could feel it. "You little rascal, you're not getting any fatter," she grumbled. But Hansel was very clever and always held out a thin chicken bone instead. A few weeks passed, and the witch lost all patience. "Gretel, light the fire, grab the pot, and fill it with water. Today we're going to cook Hansel." "Oh my God, how am I going to save my brother?" thought little Gretel, terribly sad. The flames licked the bottom of the cauldron. The water was bubbling furiously. The whole house smelled of onions, leeks, and boiling potatoes. "Is the oven hot yet?" asked the witch. "I don't know," answered Gretel. "Look for yourself." "Get out of the way. I'll check it myself," shouted the old hag. She opened the oven door and leaned far inside. "Now or never," Gretel whispered to herself. She kicked off her wooden clogs, took a running start, and pushed the witch with all her strength. The witch tumbled head first into the raging flames, and Gretel slammed the oven door shut trapping her inside. The girl freed her brother. "Wait," said Hansel. The witch was hiding something under the bed. "So much gold!" exclaimed Gretel. When they opened it, they saw it was full of diamonds, pearl necklaces, and sacks of gold. Hansel and Gretel quickly left with the treasure and took the cat. For a long time after resting near a stream, some swans kindly offered to carry them across. When they reached the shore, Hansel and Gretel knew the path. As night fell, the children finally reached their home. They began shouting with joy when they saw their father and mother. "At last you're back!" Gretel threw herself into her father's arms and then whispered in his ear, "We didn't bring any mushrooms, but we found a huge treasure." Today's story is
The Ugly Duckling.
And we learn English through the stories. Let's begin.
Near a pond lived Mother Duck. "When do you think they will be born, Mrs. Duck?" "We'll still have to wait a little longer, Mr. Beaver." One morning, the eggs cracked open and began to hatch tiny, adorable ducklings. "Quack, quack, Mommy!" "Oh, how beautiful you are," said Mother Duck very proudly. But when the fifth egg hatched, "Quack, quack, here I am," Mother Duck and her ducklings were so frightened they ran to hide. "Oh my God, how ugly it is," thought Mother Duck. "What gray feathers and what a long neck! What a misfortune!" When Mother Duck went to introduce her little ones to the farmyard animals, there was nothing but gossip. Everyone mocked them. "Have you seen it?" said the turkey scornfully. Then the rooster and the peacock gathered all the animals together. "An ugly duckling! What a disgrace! We don't want him here. He must go away." "Go away and don't come back ever. You are the shame of the family," said Mother Duck. Then the ugly duckling, who was only 2 days old and weak and tiny, realized he would have to fend for himself, though he didn't understand anything. "Why doesn't anyone love me?" he wondered. The duckling walked for hours. When the moon rose, he could go no farther and decided to sit down. He felt alone, exhausted and sad. He cried so much that he woke a little mouse. "Cuckoo, what's wrong? Why are you crying?" "My mom threw me out because I'm so ugly." "Ugly? Nonsense. I've seen other birds like you, but I don't remember what they're called. Don't worry. I know someone who will love you very much," encouraged the little mouse. Mr. Mouse was right. Aunt Carmen adored animals, and when she saw the duckling so sad, she took him into her cabin. "You can stay with me. I'll prepare a spot by the fireplace," she said, stroking him. But the cat and the farm hen didn't like it at all. "Did you hear that, Clucka?" The cat asked the hen. "That stupid one is going to take our spot." "Don't even think about it," protested Clucka. "Let's give him a scare." And every time Aunt Carmen went out, the two villains made life impossible for the duckling. "Don't stop, Grisou. Make him run a bit more." "He's useless," shouted Clucka. The cat had a wonderful time scaring the poor duckling. It was a winter night. The duckling could no longer bear it. His feet were frozen and he was exhausted. He collapsed in the middle of the snow. A farmer saw him passing by, and seeing the poor duckling in such a bad state, came over and picked him up in his arms. "Poor little one, what are you doing here all alone at this hour? I don't know what would have happened to you if I hadn't seen you." The duckling was very weak, his heart barely beating. The man picked him up in one arm and covered him with his cape to protect him from the cold wind. "Tomorrow I'll introduce you to my family. I'm sure my children will be very happy." During the long winter months, the duckling stayed on the farm. He was so well fed that he grew and grew without stopping. But every time he spread his wings or started to run, he destroyed everything. "This can't go on. You have to leave," said the farm wife. The poor duckling decided to go live near the pond. That way he ran into the little mouse again and made friends with a beaver. One day Mr. Beaver arrived very excited. "Run, come, some large white birds like you just arrived." "Ah, now I remember." The little mouse interrupted. "They're called swans." "Yes, you're a swan." The beaver continued. "Run, go with them." Timidly, the ugly duckling approached his siblings. Everyone had something to ask him. "Hello, what's your name? Where do you come from? Do you want to stay and live with us?" "It would be my greatest dream," he replied. When summer arrived, the young swan fell in love. "When I thought I was an ugly duckling, I never imagined I'd be this happy," he said while caressing the head of his mate. "Hooray!" shouted the excited little mouse. Happy ending. And
Welcome, friends, to a timeless Brothers Grimm tale. Today, Mother Holle, also known as Frau Holle or Old Mother Frost. This classic story from 1812 shows how kindness and hard work bring wonderful rewards, while laziness and greed lead to trouble. Let's find out. The story begins right now. Once upon a time, there was a widow who had 2 daughters. One of them was beautiful and industrious, the other ugly and lazy. The mother, however, loved the ugly and lazy one best because she was her own daughter, and so the other, who was only her stepdaughter, was made to do all the work of the house, and was quite the Cinderella of the family. Her stepmother sent her out every day to sit by the well in the high road, there to spin until she made her fingers bleed. Now it chanced one day that some blood fell onto the spindle, and as the girl stopped over the well to wash it off, the spindle suddenly sprang out of her hand and fell into the well. She ran home crying to tell of her misfortune, but her stepmother spoke harshly to her, and after giving her a violent scolding, said unkindly, "As you have let the spindle fall into the well, you may go yourself and fetch it out." The girl went back to the well, not knowing what to do, and at last, in her distress, she jumped into the water after the spindle. She remembered nothing more until she awoke and found herself in a beautiful meadow full of sunshine and with countless flowers blooming in every direction. She walked over the meadow, and presently she came upon a baker's oven full of bread, and the loaves cried out to her, "Take us out, take us out, or alas, we shall be burnt to a cinder. We were baked through long ago." So she took the bread shovel and drew them all out. She went on a little farther, till she came to a tree full of apples. Shake me, I pray," cried the tree. "My apples, one and all, are ripe." So she shook the tree, and the apples came falling down upon her like rain, but she continued shaking until there was not a single apple left upon it. Then she carefully gathered the apples together in a heap and walked on again. The next thing she came to was a little house, and there she saw an old woman looking out, with such large teeth that she was terrified and turned to run away. But the old woman called after her, "What are you afraid of, dear child? Stay with me. If you will do the work of my house properly for me, I will make you very happy. You must be very careful, however, to make my bed in the right way, for I wish you always to shake it thoroughly, so that the feathers fly about. Then they say, down there in the world, that it is snowing, for I am Mother Holle." The old woman spoke so kindly that the girl summoned up courage and agreed to enter into her service. She took care to do everything according to the old woman's bidding, and every time she made the bed she shook it with all her might, so that the feathers flew about like so many snowflakes. The old woman was as good as her word. She never spoke angrily to her, and gave her roast and boiled meats every day. So she stayed on with Mother Holle for some time, and then she began to grow unhappy. She could not at first tell why she felt sad, but she became conscious at last of great longing to go home. Then she knew she was homesick, although she was 1,000 times better off with Mother Holle than with her mother and sister. After waiting a while, she went to Mother Holle and said, "I am so homesick that I cannot stay with you any longer, for although I am so happy here, I must return to my own people." Then Mother Holle said, "I am pleased that you should want to go back to your own people, and as you have served me so well and faithfully, I will take you home myself." Thereupon she led the girl by the hand up to a broad gateway. The gate was opened, and as the girl passed through, a shower of gold fell upon her, and the gold clung to her, so that she was covered with it from head to foot. "That is a reward for your industry," said Mother Holle, and as she spoke, she handed her the spindle which she had dropped into the well. The gate was then closed, and the girl found herself back in the old world close to her mother's house. As she entered the courtyard, the cock who was perched on the well called out, "Cock-a-doodle-doo! Your golden daughters come back to you." Then she went in to her mother and sister, and as she was so richly covered with gold, they gave her a warm welcome. She related to them all that had happened, and when the mother heard how she had come by her great riches, she thought she should like her ugly, lazy daughter to go and try her fortune. So she made the sister go and sit by the well and spin, and the girl pricked her finger and thrust her hand into a thorn bush, so that she might drop some blood onto the spindle. Then she threw it into the well and jumped in herself. Like her sister, she awoke in the beautiful meadow and walked over it till she came to the oven. Take us out, or alas, we shall be burnt to a cinder. We were baked through long ago," cried the loaves as before. But the lazy girl answered, "Do you think I am going to dirty my hands for you?" and walked on. Presently she came to the apple tree. Shake me, I pray, my apples one and all are ripe," it cried. But she only answered, "A nice thing to ask me to do. One of the apples might fall on my head," and passed on. At last she came to Mother Holle's house, and as she had heard all about the large teeth from her sister, she was not afraid of them, and engaged herself without delay to the old woman. The first day she was very obedient and industrious, and exerted herself to please Mother Holle, for she thought of the gold she should get in return. The next day, however, she began to dawdle over her work, and the third day she was more idle still. Then she began to lie in bed in the mornings, and refused to get up. Worse still, she neglected to make the old woman's bed properly, and forgot to shake it so that the feathers might fly about. So Mother Holle very soon got tired of her, and told her she might go. The lazy girl was delighted at this, and thought to herself, "The gold will soon be mine." Mother Holle led her, as she had led her sister, to the broad gateway. But as she was passing through, instead of the shower of gold, a great bucket full of pitch came pouring over her. "That is in return for your services," said the old woman, and she shut the gate. So the lazy girl had to go home covered with pitch, and the cock on the well called out as she saw her, "Cock-a-doodle-doo! Your dirty daughters come back to you." But try what she would, she could not get the pitch off, and it stuck to her as long as she lived. And moral is that industry, kindness, and patience are rewarded, while laziness, selfishness, and greed lead to misfortune and punishment.
Today's story is A Little Tom Thumb, and we'll learn English through this story. Let's begin. A long time ago, there was a woodcutter who lived with his family in the forest. He and his wife had 7 sons. 6 of them were identical twins, and the youngest little brother, who was called Little Thumb. One year, the woodcutter and his wife had nothing to feed their children with. In desperation, they decided to abandon them in the forest rather than watch them die of hunger. Tom Thumb, who was not asleep, overheard the entire conversation. Early the next morning, while everyone slept, Little Thumb went to the riverbank and gathered white pebbles, much to the astonishment of the local frogs. Then he returned to the house, taking care not to wake anyone. Little Thumb, who was very clever, had planned something. Later, the woodcutter and his wife took the children to the forest, and when night fell while the children gathered wood, they abandoned them. When they realized they had been left behind, Little Thumb's brothers grew frightened. "Don't cry," Little Thumb told them. "We're not lost. I've left white pebbles along the path. We just have to follow them to get back." Meanwhile, the woodcutter and his wife were lamenting. The local lord, who learned of their hardships, had given them money to help. But their sons had disappeared. They were lost in the deepest part of the forest. But suddenly, "Daddy, Mommy, we've come back!" The parents were overjoyed, but the happiness lasted only as long as the money did. Very soon, misfortune returned, worse than before. Little Thumb overheard once again that his parents were going to abandon them in the forest. But this time he couldn't gather little pebbles. Someone had locked the door. He had another idea, just as good as the first one. He would scatter breadcrumbs along the path. But Tom Thumb forgot that little birds love breadcrumbs. Now they were truly lost. There was no way to find the path. Little Thumb climbed a tree to see if he could spot it. There's a huge house. We're saved," he cried. "Oh, poor children. I can't let you in. A terrible ogre lives here who eats children. He'll be back soon." "Please, ma'am, let us in. We're hungry and cold. We'll hide before the ogre returns." The lady took pity and gave them food. Then she hid them in a trunk. I smell fresh meat," roared the ogre. "You're mistaken. It's the roast I prepared for you." No, my nose is infallible. Here they are, in the trunk." "Oh, I put them there to surprise you," said the frightened lady. "They'd be tastier after a night of rest." "You're right, I'll eat them tomorrow." The lady put the brothers to bed in a large bed next to the ogre's 7 daughters. "I'll come back to free you at dawn," she promised. But Little Thumb couldn't fall asleep. "What if the ogre comes to swallow us while we sleep?" he thought. Next to his brother's bed slept the ogre's 7 daughters. Each wore a golden crown, and Little Thumb had an idea. Without waking them, Little Thumb removed the crowns and put them on his brothers. Then he placed his brothers' hats on the ogre's daughters. At midnight, the ogre entered the room with a huge knife. "What was I about to do?" he said when he touched his daughters' crowns. Then he touched the hats and he ate his daughters. "Let's escape through the window," said Little Thumb. At dawn, the ogre went to the room. "You'll pay for this." He put on his 7-league boots, magical boots that let him run very fast, and began pursuing the brothers. He scoured the country in a few hours but didn't find them. He lay down by a tree and fell asleep. The 7 brothers were hidden. Little Thumb had an idea. He approached the ogre, removed his boots, and put them on. Since the boots were magical, they shrank in an instant to fit Little Thumb's feet perfectly. With a single step, Little Thumb crossed to the other side of the ravine. "Come and get me," he shouted to the ogre. The ogre, furious, lunged toward Little Thumb. "You won't escape," he cried. But without his boots, the ogre fell to the bottom. A terrible end for a terrible man, if that's how things are. Thanks to the 7-league boot, Little Thumb quickly found his way home. "Daddy, Mommy, we've found you. We're rich thanks to the golden crowns." Years passed, and the king heard of Little Thumb and his magical boots and appointed him royal messenger. Never before or since has there been a messenger as swift as Little Thumb. The happy end.